Initiation into Hermetics by Franz Bardon, Part 9. Step 9. In the chapter referring to the Magic Psychic Training Step 7, I have already clearly dealt with the problem of clairvoyance. In this step, I want to examine it closely once more. The various instructions that have been published to date for the attainment of this faculty did not bring about the desired success in anyone. Even people who are especially gifted in the mediumistic line have only attained a partial success that is getting lost sooner or later. But people like these are very often struck by different diseases such as weakness of the eyes, nervous disturbances, etc. The main reason for such ailments can be found in the fact that the clairvoyance has not been produced as a result of the mental or astral development, but has been conjured up by force, and therefore is one-sided and morbid. Following any of those incompetent instructions leads without exception to an unnatural, morbid neutralization of an element that will result in an oversensitivity of one of the sense organs. Consequently, it is not impossible that in this manner perceptions from the astral and mental worlds may take place. But all these effects depend on the spiritual intelligence of the exercising person, on the maturity, and on the karma too. The neutralization of an element can be divided into four main groups. 1. Neutralization of the fire principle. To this group belong all experiments of clairvoyance that have been performed by fixation, such as crystal gazing, staring at one point, a shining surface, black ink, mirrors, etc. 2. Neutralization of the air principle. In this group are all those experiments of clairvoyance that are performed with the help of fumigation and by inhaling of narcotic vapors, gases, etc. 3. Neutralization of the water principle. Here the neutralization is brought about by experiments made with narcotics and alkaloids such as opium, hashish, soma, and peyote, which are introduced into the bloodstream in the course of the digestive process. 4. Neutralization of the earth principle. Answering the same purpose are all the practices that cause any kind of dissociation or split off consciousness, for example dancing, swaying, rotating the head, etc. To this group also belong all the unwanted and morbid visions of the insane and all the pathological cases that occur as a result of shock, fury, and exhaustion. A great deal could be said about the variety of such exercises and their dangers and disadvantages, but this short description will be sufficient for the sincere magician. It is quite obvious that the neutralization of any element principle results not only in severe damage to the health, but it delays the spiritual development too, mainly in cases where such and similar experiments have been practiced for a long time and have become a habit. Based on these four principal groups, the skeptic has the opportunity to convince himself of the experience of higher powers, but if he can neither master himself nor the elements, he will quite easily succumb to the temptations of lower forces. And once giving in to them, one will find it very hard indeed to ascend again. Only a well-trained participant with a firm will who is mastering the elements and has developed the astral senses in the exercises of the various steps can afford himself a temporary neutralization or elimination of any element principle without jeopardy to his body, spirit, and soul. The true magician will restore his elemental balance with the help of his exercises. His results in the practice of clairvoyance are satisfying because he does not try out experiments, but works deliberately with the faculties he has achieved, which are the concomitances of his spiritual and psychic development. 1. Practice of clairvoyance with magic mirrors. There are two kinds of magic mirrors. 1. The optic mirrors made from flat or concave glass and covered on one side with silver amalgam or black lacquer. As for the concave mirror, the outside is lacquered and the concave inside part will be shiny. Crystal balls also belong to the magic mirrors, and so do the flat or concave metal mirrors, the surface of which has been provided with a colored or black liquid. The surface of a pool also can serve as an optic mirror. To the second kind of magic mirror belong those that have been fitted out with the fluid condensers I have described previously. First of all, the magician has got to know that it is not the mere mirror granting the success, but the astral and mental faculties developed by the preceding exercises. Consequently, the magician will regard any magic mirrors as an appliance, an expedient, or a sort of tool. This does not mean that he would not be able to work without a mirror, but because of the manifold opportunities that a magic mirror may offer, the magician likes to make use of this help. He who has worked step by step through this practical course, however, will never just sit in front of a magic mirror and tire his visual nerves. He will operate in quite a different way that is magically correct. Before I describe some of these practices in detail, I will quote some examples where a magic mirror may be very helpful. 1. When working with the imagination, where optic nerves are required. 2. When loading up with powers, fluids of every kind. 3. As a transit gate to all desired planes. 4. As a help to induce a communication with living and deceased persons. 5. As a help to get contact with powers, beings, etc. 6. As equipment for radiotherapy and room impregnation. 7. To influence their own or other people's personality. 8. As a magic transmitter and receiver. 9. As a help to prevent dangerous and undesirable influences. 10. As an implement for the projection of all the desired powers, pictures, paintings, etc. 11. As a television set. 12. As a help to investigate the present, past, and future. All the possibilities cannot be quoted, considering that the magic mirror represents a sort of universal help. Based on these 12 examples, the intuitive magician now is able to invent other new practices. Sit in the asana before your magic mirror at a distance of 1 to 2 yards. The lighting does not play any important part at all. Now start on imagination exercises by imagining objects on the surface of the mirror, one after another, which you are supposed to see with your eyes open as distinctly as if they were really there. Considering the fact that you have become a master of imagination in the meantime, this preliminary exercise will not be difficult for you. Hold on to the imagination of the object for some minutes and dissolve it afterwards with the help of the imagination. Supposing that you still have difficulties with the imagination of objects, first try imagination exercises with colors before proceeding to objects. As I mentioned before, the optic imagination faculty is analogous to the fire element, and magicians who master this element perfectly will have the best success with the magic mirror too. After the imagination of objects, you may turn to exercises with different animals, thereafter with human beings. First try to imagine features of friends, later of strange people and races. Now extend your imagination work over the whole body. As soon as you are able to imagine a human being, whether known or unknown, male or female on the surface of the mirror, continue with the imagination of houses, areas, places, etc., until you have achieved a wonderful skill here too. Only now are you prepared magically to execute the correct mirror magic. This preliminary exercise is very important because the mental, astral, and material eyes must get accustomed, with the help of these imaginative exercises, to perceive the size and the clearness of the impressions. Otherwise, one will perceive distorted pictures only. Performing this preliminary exercise, one must never tolerate any pictures to appear in the mirror spontaneously, which could easily occur in the case of persons with spiritualistic talents. Therefore, one must firmly refuse all pictures that appear unwanted on the surface of the mirror, however beautiful and fantastic they might be, because anything unwanted that one does see belongs to the realm of hallucinations, reflections of the mind from the subconscious that like to appear to deceive the magician and prevent him from his work. Performing this preliminary exercise, one will notice that the imaginative work becomes much easier the bigger the mirror happens to be. 2. The loading of the magic mirror. The next task of the magician will be to become familiar with the loading of mirrors. He must be able to bind the desired power to the surface of any mirror with the help of imagination, drawing it whether out of himself or directly from the universe, to accumulate this power and to dissolve it again by imagination into the primary source. The following loadings are to be made. 1. With all four elements, one after the other. 2. With Akasha. 3. With the light. 4. With the electric fluid. 5. With the magnetic fluid. As soon as the magician has gained a certain skill in loading the mirror, he is fit for further mirror experiments, for which I will quote some examples concerning the various methods. 3. The magic mirror as a transit gate to all planes. When performing this experiment, take care that you are not disturbed by your surroundings. Sit comfortably in front of your mirror and load its surface with the akasha, which you suck into your body by lung and pore breathing. The loading of the mirror with the personal akasha can take place whether by your hands or directly via the solar plexus. Now forget all about your body and think of yourself as a spirit, able to adopt any shape and size. Now imagine your body becoming so small that it is able to go right through the mirror. Doing this with the help of the imagination, you will then be on the astral plane. Stay there deliberately for some time and have a good look around without losing your consciousness or falling asleep. Having done so, return via the mirror and connect yourself again in complete darkness on the astral plane. After frequent repetition, you will perceive light. A strange feeling of freedom, timelessness, and spacelessness will overcome you. Now you happen to be on the astral plane, which is usually called the other world or the beyond. After frequent exercises, you will meet with deceased people and other beings, and if you wish to see one of the departed, you will be connected with this person instantly. After a few visits on that astral level, you will know all about the laws valid there, and you will see the place that shall be yours once you have left your physical body. The fear of death will be abolished hereby once and forever. Supposing that you concentrate yourself from the astral plane onto a higher plane, you will very soon perceive finer vibrations. A sensation of extreme lightness, sort of being etherized, will overcome you, and you will be able to get in touch with beings of these higher spheres. You will partake of cognitions, perceptions, and experiences that none of the mortals could ever give you. You will always return to your own body with spiritual vibrations of a higher kind, which cannot be described in mere words. Which of the sphere you will be able to visit depends entirely on the mastering of the elements and on your spiritual and astral purity, the ennobling of your character. There are no restrictions as far as the acquirement of higher knowledge is concerned. Having collected you experiences there, you may come in contact with high light entities too, in exactly the same manner. But in this case, the mirror is not to be loaded with akasha, but with concentrated light, similar to a sun. No doubt that with the aid of the mirror method, you will be able to visit lower spheres too, for example that of the elements and the beings there. In this case, you have to load the mirror with the respective element of the plane you wish to visit. Passing through the mirror, the form of the respective plane has to be adopted equally. If you wish to visit the kingdom of the goblins, not only the mirror must be loaded with the earth element, but your own spirit has to be imaginatively transformed in the shape of a gnome and to be filled entirely with the earth element. The same thing comes to pass with the spirits of the air, the so-called fairies, the spirits of the water or mermaids, and the spirits of the fire, the salamanders. Here as well, the experiences you will accomplish are so abundant and marvelous that books could be written about these problems. How the spirits of the different elements can be summoned to come down to our earth, and the way they can be made useful to do certain tasks, I will describe in my second volume. entitled The Practice of Magical Evocation. The magic mirror representing a link between living and deceased persons. Supposing you wish to use the mirror to communicate with a friend or somebody else, or to give orders to a person to write to you or come to see you, proceed as follows. Load the surface of the mirror with Akasha, meditating on the fact that everywhere between yourself, the mirror, and your friend there is Akasha, that neither time nor space exists anymore. Hold on to this sensation in deep meditation, and at the same time wish to see your friend in the mirror. A few moments later, you will see the person you wish to see like in a panoramic picture, and notice what the person is engaged with at the moment, and the nearest surroundings too. At the same time, you will experience the sensation of standing next to the person. If the surroundings are familiar to you, you will be able to convince yourself of the truth of what you saw in the mirror with the help of mental wandering. Provided the magician has been trained correctly, his astral senses duly schooled, his experiences with the magic mirror will correspond to the real facts, as he may state with the help of spirit wandering. Otherwise, you have to repeat the experiment frequently until you are quite sure that the things you see are in accordance with the real facts, which can be corroborated without any doubt by personal scrutiny. If, for instance, you notice that the person you wish to see is asleep, then with the help of the imagination draw the spirit, that is the mental body, into your mirror and condense it through your will to such a degree that the person really seems to stand in front of you. If you manage to accomplish this, give the order you have been thinking about to the person. Doing this, you have to observe the mood of the present imperative, just as you did when performing self-suggestion, because it is possible that the subconscious of the other person will start to oppose. But not one truly wise magician will degrade himself to give any orders for the sake of an evil purpose. The Akasa principle would take severe revenge on him. Furthermore, it is possible to make an astral contact with another magician of the same degree of development with the help of the magic mirror, and everything the practicant is talking about in the mirror will be perceived by his colleague, even at the remotest distance, sometimes so loudly as to be heard quite distinctly by a sensitive person in the neighborhood, although all is spoken from a great distance. Deceased persons can be called up to appear in the mirror in the same manner. In this case, one has to concentrate on the Akasha and to imagine the person, or one has to think intensely that he or she may appear. If one wants to call a person one did not know, one has to concentrate on a certain clue dating from the time when the person was alive. One calls the name into the Akasha and waits in deep meditation for the appearance of the deceased being. In a very short time, the being will show up in the mirror, and the magician can express his desires. At the beginning, the communication with the deceased person will take place in a sort of thinking aloud, but later on one can really make conversation if one wants to. One has the opportunity as well to make the deceased person step out of the mirror and condense the appearance with the help of the earth element so that the person becomes visible even to the eye of any person who is absolutely untrained. It is entirely up to every individual how much he wishes to specialize in this work. Various other beings can be called up and condensed too, but the details about this problem will be found in my work, The Practice of Magical Evocation, because certain rules of conduct have to be considered here. 5. The magic mirror to contact powers, entities, and see. I will describe this method too in my second book, The Practice of Magical Evocation. At this point, let me remark only for the sake of curiosity as follows. Supposing the magician loads his mirror with Akasha, imaginatively drawing his sign on the surface with the element analogous to the entity, his character, and his symbol, he is able to come in close contact with this respective being if he pronounces the name of the entity according to the universal laws of Kabbalah. The contact will enable the magician to achieve anything according to the original properties of the being. The same thing can be said about all the other beings and powers. 6. The magic mirror to influence the self or other people. Any magic mirror can serve as an excellent help for self-influence, but the best result will be obtained with a mirror equipped with a fluid condenser. There are so many different opportunities of employing it that it is quite impossible to register all of them. Here I can quote only a few practical examples. Draw so much light from the universal ocean of light that you can feel yourself red hot like a sun. Impregnate this light with a concentration on a desire, wishing, for instance, that the light and its radiation might bestow intuition, inspiration, or any other desirable faculty on you, or make you realize a certain truth. Now let the light flow through your hands onto the surface of the mirror and accumulate there until all of the light has passed from your body into the mirror. Form the light into a brilliant white ball, emitting extremely intense rays. Repeat this loading several times at short intervals until you are quite sure that the mirror has been so intensely loaded that the rays are penetrating right through your body, spirit, and soul, releasing the influence you have been wishing for. Now, with the help of your willpower and imagination, combined with a firm conviction, bind this light to the surface of the mirror for so long a time as you need it, and then dissolve it again. You have to be so firmly convinced of the effect and the influence of the light that not a shade of doubt will arise in you. It is just this unshakable and firm conviction that gives this enormous dynamic power to the radiance of the light, coming very near to a physical effect. Some years ago, I myself loaded a magic hollow glass mirror in this manner so strongly that it burst into hundreds of chips, and I had to procure a mirror made from oak for my task. Sit in front of the mirror and meditate about the truth you wish to recognize or about the problems you want to solve. After finishing the mediation, interpose the Akasha principle or induce a trance in yourself, and you will soon accomplish your task. In any case, you will get a pleasant surprise by working in this manner, and later on you can hardly do without this practice when performing your meditations. If you keep the mirror loaded, you have to protect it from other people looking at it. The best thing to do is wrap it in silk, because silk is well known to be a splendid insulator. You can also direct the rays for your mirror onto your bed, allowing them to work all night long, influencing your subconscious to achieve the desired purpose while you sleep. Your self-suggestion will reinforce the effect and produce a quicker success. It is quite obvious that you will not only arouse cognitions and faculties in this manner, bringing them to a higher level of development, but your soul and your spirit likewise will be influenced in the desired respect. If you do not need the influence of the mirror any longer, or a different task requires a different loading, such as the irradiation of Akasha or of one of the elements, or electric or magnetic fluids may be wanted, then you have to suppress the first loading in the reversed order with the help of imagination to dissolve the light, sending it back into the universe. You can exert an influence on other people with rays, but in this case, the desired loading has to be led to the mirror directly out of the universe with the imagination. So it is possible to accomplish all kinds of experiments such as hypnosis, magnetic sleep, mediumistic conditions, a fact that the magician will find quite natural. He will therefore arrange his practice accordingly. 7. The magic mirror for room impregnation and treatment of sick people. A similar procedure is followed in the impregnation of rooms with the help of the magic mirror. Load your mirror with the fluid corresponding to your wish, such as light, biomagnetism, akasha, etc., feeding its accumulation directly from the universe so strongly with the imagination that the radiance is spreading over the entire room already while performing this accumulation. In this manner, you can, if necessary, irradiate the room in which you are living for days, even for months, in order to obtain success, health, inspiration, peace, etc. You will also be able to reinforce the loading, if necessary, by condensing the dynamites by means of frequent repetition. It is a matter of course that all kinds of diseases also can be healed in this manner, provided that the mirror has been loaded in the correct way. You can also seat a sick person in front of the mirror, and he or she will feel well again after a few minutes, according to the power accumulated by the mirror. 8. The magic mirror as a transmitter and receiver. The mirror can be used fabulously for this purpose as well. You can perform experiments of animating pictures and transferring sounds. Similarly to the transmitter and receiver of a radio, our mirror also can be used in this line. I will quote two practices briefly that the magician can execute without any effort at all, provided that he has followed me to this point step by step. The first practice refers to the reciprocal animation of thoughts or pictures between two equally skilled magicians. The distance does not play any part at all. 10 or 1,000 miles do not matter. The possibility of communication varies in that it can take place by means of thought, pictures, letters, words, or senses. The practice always remains the same, and all work is accomplished with the aid of the Akasha principle. Following is the description of the mirror acting as transmitter without the person who is to be influenced knowing anything about transmitting. At the beginning, it will be advantageous if the magician gets accustomed to a certain routine with his partner, who is supposed to be on the same level of development, or at least manages to work with the Akasha principle. Fix the exact transmitting and receiving times in accordance with your partner. Both can take place at the same time. First of all is the practice of transmitting. The sending person has to load the mirror with Akasha and to induce a state of trance with the help of the Akasha principle. Then, with the help of imagination, he will eliminate the concept of time and space between himself and the receiver, and thus have the feeling of standing next to his partner. Later on, this sensation will occur quite automatically, as we know already from experience with previous experiments. Try at first to transmit simple shapes and patterns such as a triangle or a circle together with the desire that the partner on the other end will be able to see them in his mirror. The receiver has nothing to do but load his mirror with Akasha before the transmission, to trance himself with the help of the Akasha principle, and to concentrate on the fact that he will distinctly see everything in the mirror that his partner is transmitting. Provided both partners are on the same level of training, the picture projected to the mirror by the transmitting partner will turn out visible to the receiving partner. As soon as the time for transmission and reception has run out, change over to become the receiver yourself and repeat the experiment of telepathy in the reverse order. It is always a good point if the magician is versed with the transmission as well as the receiving practice. Nobody ought to be discouraged by failures at the beginning, but he should continue to exercise with tenacity. Success will surely show up after several attempts. As soon as one is able to receive simple pictures, one may reinforce the exercise by selecting more complicated pictures, later on pictures of living persons, of places and landscapes, similarly to the manner in which you were handling the preliminary exercises concerning the mirror imagination. Providing you are quite familiar with this experiment, you may pass to transfer ideas without imagination, that is, ideas that have been registered with the intellect only. Supposing one has gained sufficient experience as a transmitter and a receiver, one may try to write short words into the mirror with the help of the imagination to be read in the receiver's mirror. Words may be followed by sentences, and finally one will be able to transfer written messages from one mirror to the other. Having attained the faculty of optical transference, you may proceed to the acoustic transference. Speak one or two rods into the mirror with the desire that the receiver might hear these words. Here likewise the receiver remains in a trance state waiting for the message to arrive. At first he will feel it very similar to a sort of thinking aloud, but from one exercise to the next he will hear it more distinctly, and finally as clearly as having a conversation over the phone. Later again, it will be as if the words were spoken directly into the receiver's ears. As soon as one has become familiar with the transmitting and receiving practices, short sentences can be transmitted and received, until one has become able to transmit and receive full messages and news by constant training. Many adepts in the Orient are using this method to send messages to each other. In the Orient, this faculty is called messages through the air. This is to be understood in a symbolic way, since it is in fact done with the Akasha principle. Consequently, it is quite obvious that various feelings also can be mediated between the transmitter and the receiver. This problem needs no further description. If the magician masters the faculty to transmit to and receive from an equally trained partner, he will also be able to intercept dialogues or pictures transferred between other practicants in the same way as happens in the case of broadcasting, a fact that is called radio piracy in the magic terminology too. Now I will describe the magic mirror as a transmitter destined to transfer ideas, words, and pictures to people who are not magically trained at all, who have not the faintest notion that such a transmission takes place or that they might eventually be influenced in this manner. In such a case, the magician has only to blow his intention into the Akasha-loaded mirror, including the command that this or that might be transmitted to the person or persons. If the magician interposes the Akasha principle between the mirror and the unprepared person, the latter will receive the message according to his intellect. Should anyone not be sufficiently experienced in this practice, the message will at first have the effect that the influenced person becomes restless at the given minute and feels the urge to think very intensely of the sender, the magician. Later, the receiving person will feel the message as a thought of his one, being unable to differentiate whether it was transmitted or originated in the own mind. But if the magician is interested in specializing in this kind of transmitting, he can suggest to the person in question that the messages or thoughts are coming directly from him. This practice will exert its influence on the receiving person whether instantly or in the course of the transmission. The magician can also bring about a transmission through the mirror, the effect of which is to be delayed or to be perceived by the receiver only when he has become fit for it. This moment usually comes if the respective person is not disturbed, restrained, or diverted by external influences, and receives the message shortly before falling asleep or in the morning before awakening. In such cases, the magician concentrates the idea, desire, or message into the mirror, together with the command that everything he is transmitting should be perceived by the individual, only if the necessary preparedness is happening. As long as the message has not been received, it will remain effective and adhere to the surface of the mirror. As soon as the message has been sent out, when the mirror has served its purpose and the thought or the message has been correctly received by the person to be influenced, the surface of the mirror becomes perfectly pure once more. The magician can attend to his various duties without taking any notice of his wireless work, and the mirror will produce its effect automatically until the message really has been perceived. 10. The magic mirror as a ray emitter for impregnation of rooms, treatment of sick people, and C. The magic mirror may be employed within this scope as well, and in the hands of a skilled magician, it will represent an excellent help for his development. The practice of room impregnation is as follows. When you are working in a room that you want to be influenced by the magic mirror for your own purposes only, you have to perform the loading via your own body. As far as loadings of the mirror for the benefit of other people are concerned, you have to draw the power directly from the universe without allowing it to pass through your body. Therefore, you are drawing an enormous quantity of light out of the universe, whether directly or through your own self, concentrating it with the help of the imagination in an accumulated form to the surface of the mirror. This accumulation of light must be repeated several times until the stored up light adopts the shape of a ball or disc that is spreading a brilliant white shine over the entire room like a strong lamp. Frequently repeating this exercise, you ought to see the radiant light Imagina Riley and feel it streaming like X-rays through your body. Transfer your imagination of the desire into the light with the help of your conviction and your faith. and at the same time think that the light is increasing automatically from 1 hour to the next, from day to day, and that the effect of its emissive power is growing more pervasive and more dynamic. Fix the duration of the effect by limiting the emissive power to a certain time or fixing it as a permanent effect. Now transfer the task or the desire to be fulfilled by the emissive power into the confined light. This done, arrange the mirror in your room so that you are constantly exposed to this irradiation. Take no notice of the mirror afterwards because it will work automatically, influencing you or other persons in the desired way. Therefore, you will find yourself continually subject to the influence of the irradiation. You will hardly be able to manage your work, exercises, research, and meditations without this method. If the mirror has not only been loaded magically for yourself, but for other persons as well, say to treat sick people, you will find that you can accomplish a great deal more being under the emissive influence of the mirror. You won't feel tired or worn out, and any sick person entering the room or coming in direct contact with the mirror will feel an instant relief from the complaint. The efficacy depends on the loading of the mirror. Not only one person can be treated, but as many as there is space for in the room. Professional magnetizers, or those who are engaged in the treatment of the sick or in influencing people, will find a marvelous sphere of action in this method. The emissive power also can be transferred to the greatest distance. It is not necessary to underline how valuable the magic mirror is in the hands of a magician and how many possibilities it offers. A wise magician will certainly never abuse his magic mirror and dishonor it by trying to exert bad influences with the help of it. 11. The magic mirror as a protective implement. A magic mirror also can be used as a defensive or protective tool. The impregnation of the emissive power has to be modified so that the rays of light will detain the undesirable influences or throw them back to their starting place. In any case, you have to load the impregnation of the room or mirror with akasha, transferring the quality of intangibility and impenetrability into it. Any accumulation of the akasha principle is impossible, but the wish impregnation for the sake of a dynamic effect can be repeated frequently. It is left to the magician to manufacture several mirrors for different purposes. But if he is working with long-distance transference or reception, naturally he must not insulate his room with akasha because this would prevent him from long-distance operation. Techniques for screening from negative influences and insulating certain spots are dealt with in my second book, The Practice of Magical Evocation. Apart from the possibility of using the magic mirror as a protective implement, other advantages are offered to the magician. He can use the magic mirror to put all the known fluids magnetic, electric, electromagnetic in operation and work with them in his practice. Which fluid he uses depends on the activity and the effect of his wish. 12. The magic mirror is a projector of powers, beings, and see. The magic mirror also can be used to condense all the forces of the mental and astral planes to such a degree that they can be perceived by persons who are not trained in magic at all. This is not a matter of mere imagination or suggestion, because the thoughts and entities condensed with the practices described here can be condensed in a mirror in such a manner that it is possible to take a photograph of them. Here are the instructions for the practice. The surface of the mirror is loaded with the condensed earth element projected directly from the universe. Do not project it through the body because that will cause paralysis. The stronger the accumulation, the more visible will be the appearance of anything you wish to project. Consequently, it will be opportune to repeat the accumulation of the earth element several times. If you wish to make an image or an elemental visible to any other person, proceed as follows. Introduce the akasha principle to the head of the person or to the whole body, and order the akasha principle to remain effective only for the duration of the experiment. Transfer the image to the surface of the mirror with such a clearness and distinction as if it were reality. Hold on to this conception. When the person being influenced with the Akasha principle observes the mirror, he will see your conception reproduced similar to a film. You can produce the same effect in the same manner with any elemental, elementary, or phantom. But if you decide to call a being out of the astral or any other plane, you must fill the space around your mirror with the Akasha principle. It is better to fill the whole room with Akasha. This preparation would not be necessary if you had a second mirror impregnated with Akasha in the room. All the preparations being completed, develop a trance by introducing the Akasha principle to yourself, and in this condition of trance, call the being. As long as one is not absolutely familiar with the practices of magical evocation as described in my second book, one has to be satisfied with calling deceased people from the astral plane, a performance that is to be brought about with the help of the imagination. By means of the accumulation of the earth element on the mirror surface, pictures or beings will be materialized so that they can be seen and heard by untrained persons. Everything that has been seen is, therefore, not a hallucination, for the magician is able to take a photograph of the picture condensed by the earth element. But mind, pictures condensed in such a manner have a much higher vibration than the normal light which we know. Therefore, photographs like these have to be taken in the shortest time possible, at least 1/1000 second exposure. It does not matter whether the picture is taken in the day or night, or whether the mirror is lit up or dark. But if you want to photograph the mirror and its background as well, lighting certainly will be necessary. Otherwise, there will only be the materialized picture in the mirror. Photographic plates are preferred to film. When photographing entities of the mental plane, a blue-colored filter has to be used. For all other beings, deceased people, and so forth, a violet filter must be used. For beings that consist of one element only, such as the essences of the elements, use a ruby red filter. Photos of phenomena occurring in nature, mainly concerning the magic of nature, are taken with yellow filters only. The colors of the filters are analogous to the respective planes. Moreover, the magician has the possibility to display a person's past, present, or future. 13. The magic mirror as a television. In our magic mirror, we are able to observe occurrences or events that are happening to persons known or unknown, even at the greatest distances. O the mirror with the Akasha principle, induce a trance with Akasha, and concentrate of the person whose actions you want to observe. Think of the magic mirror as being a big telescope through which you can see everything at the remotest distance. The magician will immediately see the person and the surroundings like a motion picture. At the outset, the pictures perhaps will be a little muddy, but after frequent repetition, they will become very distinct, and there will be a feeling of immediacy and nearness to the desired person that will become quite convincing, almost as if you were standing next to the person, even a distance of 1,000 miles of no importance at all. In order to verify and be absolutely sure that everything one wishes to see corresponds to reality, one can imagine any different action of the same person. If one can manage this in full clearness with your astral senses, then the things we have seen were a deception, and the exercise must be repeated until one has obtained the faculty of distinguishing real facts for hallucinations and deceptions. Under the guidance of a trained magician, even an untrained person can take part in such a kind of television. Magicians, especially trained and experienced in this field, will even manage to take photographs using a red filter. When you are not so much interested in the material occurrences that you are observing at a distance, but only in the psychic life, the character and feelings of a human being, then do not think of the material body of the person you want to see, but imagine the astral body only. After a little while, you will see the aura and the characteristics of this person in the various shades of color, from which you will be able to come to logical conclusions concerning his character and his faculties, according to the rules of analogy. If you want to see only the spirit of a person in the mirror, Imagine the material and astral body as not being there. Here too the images corresponding to the spirit will appear, and in this manner you can pursue the train of thoughts of a person, even at the greatest distance. As one can see from the example quoted here, the faculty of reading the thoughts of another person at the greatest distance can be managed without any difficulties, and it depends entirely on your own will how far you wish to extend this mastery. 14. The magic mirror for investigation of the past, present, and future. Working with the mirror, one of the most difficult tasks is the exact investigation of the past, present, and future of other people. It is comprehensible that the magician can perceive his own past and present in a mirror similar to a motion picture, but he will most certainly avoid doing so. Should he be so keen as to satisfy his curiosity to learn all about his future, it would not be difficult for him to concentrate on this problem and inquire into every detail. But there's the rub. In the same moment, when seeing his future in the mirror, he is depriving himself of his own free will. One could compare him to a pattern that has to be filled in without the possibility that anything could be done for or against it. It would be quite a different matter if the Akasha principle in its highest form, let us call it divine providence, gave a warning to the magician in one way or another, perhaps against dangers, without him having any intention at all to see or to learn anything. It is quite obvious that the strictest attention has to be paid to warnings of this kind without any exception, because ignoring them would cause severe damage to the magician. Having arrived at this point, the magician will be able to distinguish whether the warning comes from one of the beings irrespective of which plane or directly from the Akasha principle. The magic mirror is an excellent aid in instances concerning untrained people or whomever the magician takes a great interest in to investigate their past, present, and future. All thoughts, perceptions, feelings, and physical actions leave behind them exact records in the Akasha or primary source, a fact that enables the magician to read like an open book in the Akasha with the help of his magic mirror or directly while in a trance. All he needs to do is to concentrate on it by imagination. In the beginning, when the magician has not wholly mastered this problem, the images will appear almost incoherent and sporadic. By frequent repetition of this exercise, one picture after another will appear on the surface of the mirror in the correct connection with the past as clearly and distinctly as if the magician himself were actually realizing the events. The magician can unroll one occurrence after another, beginning from the present back to the childhood and the day of birth. It is advisable to follow the past only back to the moment of birth, although it is without a doubt possible to investigate the previous incarnations as well. But the magician is warned against doing so, because any investigation of the future, as well as of the former life, in his own case or that of another person, is a sort of meddling in the affairs of divine providence, and such a curiosity would cause dangerous consequences. To begin with, he would instantly become as old as he was in all the former lives he lived, a fact that would cause a very unpleasant feeling in him and a lack of interest in any further life. Secondly, the magician is entirely responsible for all the blunders committed in his former lives. The only advantage would be that he would become conscious of the experiences in his former life, a fact that would never compensate for the disadvantages. Supposing the magician would like to know something about the future of another person for some really important reason, all he needs to do is to induce a trance. Provided he is quite familiar with this practice, there is nothing at all that will remain hidden. This kind of clairvoyance, where the magician is able to perceive his own and other people's mental, astral, and material planes in the correct connection, is the highest point that may be attained through working with the magic mirror. As soon as the magician has arrived there, I have nothing more to tell him with reference to the magic mirror, and he will find out for himself new practices based on the examples I have quoted here. Magic Psychic Training 9. 1. conscious separation of the astral body from the physical body. In this chapter, the magician will learn how to separate his astral body from his physical body by means of conscious training, and how to get to places he wants, not only with his spirit, but also with his soul, to places he wants to visit in the shape of his astral body. As we shall see, the emission of the astral body is different from mental wandering or the state of trance caused by akasha. The state during which the mental and astral bodies are separated from the physical body is called ecstasy in the terminology of the occultists. The perfect magician is able to go anywhere he likes in his astral shape, though in most cases he will content himself with mental wandering or the state of trance. As a rule, the astral body, when united with the mental body, but separated from the physical body, will only carry out jobs that need to be done by physical magic action. When emitting the astral body, certain precautions have to be taken, since in this case, both links between the mental and astral body and the physical body, the so-called mental and astral matrix, are loosened from the body. The mental and astral bodies are connected to the physical body only by a very subtle elastic ribbing that shines like silver. If during the period in which the mental and astral bodies are loosened from the physical matrix, the latter were touched by another person, no matter whether skilled or unskilled in magic practice, the said ribbon, being extremely subtle, would break in two at once. The connection between the physical body being thus interrupted, physical death would be the consequence. Therefore, utmost care has to be taken right from the beginning of these exorcist ease that nobody should be able to touch the body of the magician when he puts himself in the described state. The thin ribbon would be torn to pieces, the electromagnetic fluid in man being much stronger. Even the tender life ribbon of an advanced magician would not be able to resist that fluid. A medical expert examining the body of a person killed in such a manner would come to the conclusion that death was caused by heart failure or embolism. In its state of ecstasy, the physical body is, in the case of apparent death, without life and feeling. Its breath has stopped, and its heart has come to a standstill. The following lines are intended to give you a clear picture of the practical side of the procedure. Apparent death, too, is a state of ecstasy, though caused by the pathological conditions in the person concerned, which can be explained easily by any magician. It should be added, however, that the mental matrix, the binding agent between the mental and astral body, is kept working by normal breathing, which supplies the blood vessels with the four elements and akasha via the lungs. We all know from experience that there can be no life without breathing. The astral matrix, the connecting link between the astral and the physical body, is kept alive by food. The magician will now become aware of the connection between the food supply and breath, and will have found its true cause in the preceding chapters dealing with conscious breathing and well-balanced nutrition. If one point or another is neglected during this stage of development, disharmonies, diseases, and other inconveniences will be the result. Many mental and psychic disturbances are caused by irregularities in or neglect of these two factors. Therefore, it has been pointed out right from the beginning that body, soul, and spirit must be equally developed and kept in order. If the physical body is not well balanced, not strong enough and tough enough, and if it does not have a sufficient reserve of electromagnetic fluids stocked by substantial food, rich in vitamins and minerals, thereby procuring itself an adequate elasticity, ecstasy training could have an ill effect on it. Therefore, any magician will agree in that ascetical training necessitating diet reduction must be considered extreme and therefore unhealthy. Many Oriental methods demanding asceticism and ascetical training are one-sided and no doubt dangerous to people who are not natives of India and whose physical structure is not accustomed to the local climate. If the magician, however, has been able to develop equally the three steps of existence, that is, body, soul, and spirit, he need not fear that there could happen any disorders in his mental, astral, or physical bodies. But the person not going through this course step by step, but neglecting here and there the necessary precautions must account for possible disharmonies. The magician will therefore not start practicing the emission of his astral body unless he is quite certain to have a thorough command over all the steps recommended up to this point. In the case of mental wandering, the most subtle part, the astral matrix connecting body and soul, remains in the body. But when the astral body is separated from the physical body, everything is pulled out of the latter, which makes double precautions necessary when one proceeds to ecstasy training. The procedure to be followed when emitting the astral body actually is quite simple, especially for magicians that have a good command over mental wandering. The separation of the astral from the physical body is carried out as follows. Sit in your asana posture, though these exercises also can be done when lying down, and let your mental body escape from your physical body. Your consciousness now being transferred into your mental body, watch your physical body. You will have the sensation of your physical body being asleep. By means of imagination, you must now think that your astral body, much the same as your mental body before, is being drawn out of your physical body by your willpower. The shape of the astral body must be equal to the shape of your mental and physical body. Then unite yourself with your astral body by entering the astral shape. When doing so, you will have a queer sensation, as though the astral body were not quite yours, and therefore you must at once consciously connect your mental to your astral matrix. Otherwise, you would not succeed in keeping your astral body in your imagination, the astral being constantly pulled towards your body, as though an invisible magnet were working on it. If you watch your physical body during this exercise, you will realize that there are irregularities in your body's breathing. But the moment you concentrate your thoughts on uniting with your astral body and on breathing regularly, you will deem yourself actually united with your astral body. Right from the moment you are thus uniting yourself with your astral body, like a spirit beside your physical body, do not watch anything else but the breathing. This exercise has to be repeated until you have become accustomed to breathing in your astral body, which you have drawn out of your physical body, and with which you have united yourself spiritually. As you see, it is only conscious breathing in the astral body that brings about this separation of the astral matrix. If by repeated practice, breathing in the mental as well as the astral body has become quite familiar to you, you may go another step forward. If you begin breathing in your astral body, your physical body will stop breathing. Because of the separation of the physical body from the astral shape, the former will lapse into a state of lethargy, a sort of morbid drowsiness, the limbs stiffening, the face turning pale just like a dead body. But as soon as you stop breathing outside your physical body, wanting to end your experiment, you will instantly notice your astral body, as if pulled by a magnet, at once being pulled into your physical body, which now begins to breathe again normally. But not before you spiritually transfer your mental body, that is, your consciousness to the physical body, so that the astral and the mental body reassume their physical shape. Will you recover your senses and gradually come round again? What we usually call dying is the same process, with the only difference that the matrix between the physical and the astral body is destroyed. In the case of normal death, the astral matrix between the physical and the astral body has been broken in two by a lethal disease or for some other reason, and therefore the astral body together with the mental body, having lost its footing in the physical body, has to emanate automatically from the latter, whether willingly or unwillingly. During this process, breathing is transferred to the astral body without the astral body becoming conscious of it. That is why deceased beings at first do not feel any difference between the physical and the astral body. They will come to realize it gradually as soon as they notice that the material body no longer is of any use to them, and that the astral body is subject to very different rules, the laws of the Akasha principle. I have written about this already in the previous chapters concerning the astral plane. Consequently, the practice of sending the astral body out deliberately is an imitation of the process of dying. This evidently proves how near you come to the border between actual life and what we call death when you practice such exercise. Therefore, proceed with caution, provided the magician has got a perfect control of sending out his astral body. One, the fear of death has become absolutely superfluous, and two, the magician does know exactly the process of his dying, as well as the place where he is going after stripping off the mortal frame. After frequently practicing the deliberate separation of the astral body from the physical one, breathing in your astral shape will become a matter of routine, so that you will not notice it anymore, and you will experience the same sensations in the astral body as if you were still in your physical body. If you wish to return to your physical body, you have to hold the breath deliberately back in the astral body so that the astral body is able to disentangle from the mental body and to reassume the shape of the physical body. In this moment, when the astral body reassumes the physical shape, the body will automatically begin to breathe again, which makes the return into the physical body possible. This should always be considered first. Being subject to very different laws, the mental body does not breathe in the same rhythm as the material body does in connection with the astral body. Only if you have become accustomed to the astral and the mental body going out from and returning to the physical body, so that you can do so as often as you please, considering the precautionary measures with respect to your breathing, only then are you truly able to withdraw successively from the physical body. In the beginning of this preliminary exercise, do not stray far from the side of your body. Thus, you have the opportunity to stand beside your physical body or to take up its actual posture, the asana. An entirely different exercise is to observe not merely the body, but to take notice of the immediate surroundings, similarly to sending out the mental body. After all, it is the same process as mental wandering. You should feel, hear, and perceive every single object, with the difference, however, that the mind is in a way taking a robe with it, in our case, the astral body, which allows sort of a more physical effect. Supposing you will pay a visit somewhere in your mental shape, only in order to observe an event that might cause a good or bad psychic sensation. You can neither perceive nor feel it in your mental body, nor can you be influenced in any way. On the other hand, if you make the same experiment with your astral body, you will perceive it as intensely as if you used your physical body. In the next exercise, you will learn to withdraw gradually from your body, step by step. At first, you will feel as it were pulled back from your physical body by an invisible attractive power, similar to that which a magnet exerts on iron. This is to be interpreted by the fact that the bond between the astral and the physical body ID fed, preserved and kept in balance by the most subtle fluid. By performing the exercises of sending out the astral body, you are committing a deliberate act against the lawfulness of the natural elements in your body, which must be overcome. Consequently, the movement of your astral body requires a greater effort than if you would move away with your mental body alone. This is the reason why you should draw away from your body only a few steps at first and return to it instantly. Because the magnetic attractive power is constantly pulling and influencing you, it will provoke various feelings in your astral body, such as the fear of death and the like. These feelings must be overcome at any event. Having advanced to this point, you should master all these occurrences. Extend the distance from your physical body with every new exercise. As time goes on, you will be able to cover greater and greater distances. And the farther you move your astral body from your physical body, its attractive power will become all the weaker. Later on, when traveling very far, you will find it really difficult to return to your body. This will become a tricky problem for the magician, mainly if he is wandering about in planes or regions that allure him so much that he is beginning to feel a little sad at the very idea of having to return to his own body. Here you see that the magician must be absolutely the master of his feelings, because as soon as he gets accustomed to the idea of feeling quite at home in his astral body, not only on the physical level, but also on the astral plane, usually he becomes weary of life. feeling inclined never to return to his physical frame. A longing will overcome him to destroy by sheer force the bond of life that still ties him to his physical frame. Doing so would mean to commit suicide in the same way as on the physical body. Besides, it would be an offense against the divine providence and naturally would have karmic consequences. It is quite understandable that the temptation to commit such a suicide is very strong, especially if the magician is nearly pining away for grief in the physical world after all the blissfulness he experienced on the other planes. Having made good progress in these exercises concerning the sending out of the astral body, so that he can cover any distance, the magician now has the opportunity to use this ability for manifold tasks. He can transfer himself anywhere with his astral body, wherever he likes to be. He can treat sick people by accumulating and condensing the magnetic or electric fluids in the astral body and conveying them to the patients. The treatment with the astral body, if by far more pervasive and effective than by the mere thought transference or the mental wandering, because the fluids the magician is working with will become effective only on the sick person's corresponding plane. The magician can exert a lot of other influences too. He can materialize himself with the help of the earth element, which he condenses in his astral body on the astral plane under the very nose of an experienced adept, as well as a layman, to such a degree that he can be seen, heard, and perceived with the physical eyes. The issue in this respect depends on the duration of the training and on the capacity of the accumulation of the earth element in the astral body. It is obvious that the magician also can perform physical acts with the help of his astral body, producing phenomena as adepts see them, such as knocking sounds and influence on terrestrial affairs, etc. Find a satisfactory explanation here. Really and truly, no limits exist for a magician, and it is entirely up to him in which line he specializes. In any case, he knows exactly how to manage all these things, such as how to condense only one part of the body, that is, one hand, while the rest remains astral. If he is able to accelerate the electronic vibrations of an object with the help of his imagination, he will also manage to spirit away any objects corresponding to the measure of his forces and his development before the eyes of other people and transfer them to the astral plane. In these instances, the material objects are no longer subject to the material laws, but will become astral. Therefore, it is a mere trifle for the magician to transfer such objects to the farthest distance with the aid of his astral body and to bring them back again to their original form. From a layman's point of view, such phenomena seem to be chimeric, but any experienced magician will easily be able to produce such and even more astonishing phenomena that otherwise might be spoken of as sheer miracles. But as you have gathered from what I have explained up to now, these phenomena are no miracles, for in the true sense of the word, miracles do not exist at all. The magician recognizes the higher powers and their laws, and he knows how to utilize them for the benefit of mankind. A number of examples could be quoted here, but some hints may suffice for him who seeks illumination. 2. Impregnation of the astral body with the four fundamental divine qualities. When the magician has arrived at this stage of development, he will begin to express his concept of God in concrete ideas. The mystic, being trained in one side only, or a yogi, etc., sees in his deity nothing else but a mere aspect to which he renders worship and adoration. The truly wise adept, who always considers the four elements in his development, will represent the concept of God in four aspects according to the laws of the universe, namely, the omnipotence corresponding to the fire principle, the omniscience and wisdom belonging to the air principle, the immortality with the water principle, and the omnipresence with the earth principle. On this level, it will be the magician's task to meditate about these four divine ideas aspects in turn. Deep mediations enable the magician in a way to extasize directly with one of these divine virtues, fusing with it in such a manner that he feels himself to be the virtue in question. he has to experience the same will all the four virtues of God. The arrangement of the exercises is his own business. He is allowed to meditate on one of the virtues for so long until he becomes quite certain that the respective virtue has become embodied in him. He may perform the meditations according to this spare time in the manner that, through meditation, he recalls all the virtues in turns in one exercise. The meditation has to be so profound, so pervasive, and so convincing that the astral body becomes, as it were, identical with the virtue. The magician's concept of God is universal, including all the divine virtues, according to the universal laws. The magician should therefore give his keenest attention to these meditations because they are absolutely necessary to realize this union with God. As soon as he is able to form an exact idea of these four divine virtues, after long mediation, he has ripened so far as to establish that connection, the practice of which will be described in the last step of this lecture. These mediations are producing a kind of deification of the magician's spirit and soul, and finally, they will influence his body in an analogous way, enabling him to establish the union with his God, which is the sum and substance of this training course. Magic Physical Training 9. By continued practice in this course, the scholar has been led a great distance on the way to a state in which there is no more need of a special training of the body. From now on, he will have to intensify the powers he has developed so far and to use them in various ways. Below, I will give instructions that the scholar can follow without any effort, according to the measure of his development. 1. Treatment of sick people with electromagnetic fluid. It is a beautiful and sacred work to help the suffering mankind. The magician is able to do miracles as far as the treatment of the sick is concerned, just as so many saints did in the past and are still doing in the present time. Not one of the lay practitioners, magnetizers, or healing mediums will ever understand to release the dynamic power corresponding to the primary principles in the same marvelous way as the magician does. The presupposition here, of course, is that the magician knows the occult anatomy of the body with respect to the elements. Otherwise, any influence on the seat of the disease would be quite impossible. With the help of the Akasha principle and his clairvoyant eyes, the magician will immediately recognize the cause of the illness and be able to influence the roots of the illness. When the origin of the sickness happens to be in the mental sphere, the magician first of all has to influence the mind of the patient to restore the harmony. As I mentioned before, the astral sphere can only influence the astral plane, exactly as the material sphere influences the material plane only. This fact must always be kept in mind. Any transmutation from one plane to another can only be accomplished with the help of the corresponding matrix or the connecting link of a more subtle power. A thought can never produce any physical power nor cure any physical ailment, but a thought that has been concentrated on faith and conviction can cause strong vibrations in the mental sphere of the patient, which are conveyed to the astral body via the mental matrix. An influence like this does not reach farther than to the soul of the patient. This induces the patient to set his mind on the healing process, thus producing the vibrations that are necessary for recovery, but nothing else. Evidently, a sort of mental astral palliation can be accomplished. The patient himself will mentally cause the acceleration of the healing process, but this influence on the material ailment is not sufficient, especially if the patient is already lacking such an amount of internal strength that the fluids necessary for the healing cannot be renewed. Therefore, the success would only be a very trifling one and the recovery subjective. To this category of healing methods belong suggestion, hypnosis, self-suggestion, faith healing, and so on. The magician will not exactly underrate these methods, but on the other hand, he will not rely on them, using them merely by way of a makeshift. By no means will these methods represent to him so high a value that it is described in numerous books. More spectacular will be the work of a true magician who has got a great surplus of vital magnetism by occult training and a corresponding line of life. He neither needs the patient's faith nor any kind of suggestions, hypnosis, nor an aureole. A magnetizer like this loads his vital power with the help of his own surplus into the astral body, if necessary, even against the patient's will. And all this accomplishes a faster recovery because his magnetism has a stronger stimulus, thus strengthening the astral matrix of the patient. Therefore, a magnetopathist can very successfully treat a child who cannot contribute in any way to further the healing process through imagination or the subconscious. It has turned out quite differently if a magician specializing in the healing line treats hundreds of patients daily without his vital force diminishing in the least. A magician makes use of the universal laws and touches the sick physical organ directly with his influence without passing first through the astral body together with the matrix. This is the reason why the magician has a much stronger influence than all the healers known up to date. In certain circumstances, the healing process can happen so fast that it can be regarded as a miracle from the standpoint of medical science. I do not intend to prescribe any general rules to the true magician for the treatment of the sick, because I am sure that he already has his own personal method of working based on the laws he learned. It will be sufficient to give a few useful hints to him. The magician works with the willpower and the imagination when the patient suffers from a mental weakness or disturbance, and the harmony has to be restored. Here, the magician has to be fully aware of the activity of his spirit, so that not his astral or physical body, but his spirit alone activates the influence. Therefore, the keenest attention has to be paid to the spirit. Body and soul must be completely ignored in order to intensify the effect from spirit to spirit. For example, if the patient happens to be in agony or in a deep state of unconsciousness, the magician will be able to bring the patient round again. If the cause of the disease is in the astral body, the magician will work with the accumulation of vital power, which he impregnates with the desire of a complete recovery. He will convey the accumulated power from the universe into the astral body of the patient without allowing the vital power to go first through his own body. By doing so, the magician avoids any weakening of his own vital power, and at the same time a mingling of the patient's morbid odd with his own. If the causes of illness are of physical nature, and if any organ of the body has been affected, the magician resorts to the elements and to the electric and magnetic fluids. If the patient happens to be of a strong constitution, the magician will work only with elements that will have a favorable influence on the sickness. Thus, he will fight a fever with the element of water. The element concerned will produce the necessary fluids, electrical or magnetic, by itself, and a line of conduct, a regime, kind of breathing, herbs, baths, corresponding to the elements will be prescribed for the patient. But if the body of the patient has already become so weak that it is unable to accept the necessary element and consequently to produce the corresponding fluid, there is no other way out for the magician but to load the sick organ directly with the fluid. Here, the occult anatomy, according to polarization, has to be observed carefully. Any organ performing the function of the magnetic fluid must never be loaded with the electric fluid in order not to harm the patient. In organs where both fluids are at work, the magician will do well to introduce the fluids successively. Supposing he wants to exert an influence on the head by fluids, he will load the forehead, the left side and the inside, the big brain with the electrical fluid, and the back of the head, the small brain with the magnetic fluid. If the magician works by passing his hands on the patient's body, which is quite a good expedient, but not at all necessary, he will perform this act in accordance with the fluid. With reference to the head, he will influence the forehead and left side with his electric right hand, and the back and right side with his magnetic left hand. A magician who is extraordinarily well trained in the healing practice will neither have to resort to any kind of strokes nor to passing his hands on the patient. He can accomplish everything by means of his well-developed imagination. He must understand how to lead the magnetic or the electric fluid with the imagination into the smallest organs. He must be able to direct the magnetic fluid into the inner part of the eyes or the electric fluid into the edge of the eyeballs. In this manner, he will not only successfully treat many eye complaints, strengthen the visual power, but he will also be able to make the blind see again, provided that the blindness has not been caused by a structural defect. The neutral parts of the body are therefore to be loaded with the element belonging to the respective region of the body or with the accumulated vital power. It would not be too serious a drawback neglecting the neutral parts at all, because the irradiation of the fluids will influence the neutral points of the organs indirectly too. On the chance that not only one single organ is concerned, but that the whole body has been affected, as in nervous disease or diseases of the blood, the electric fluid has to be led to the entire right side of the body and the magnetic fluid to the left side. If the patient is not receptive enough after successive conveyances of both fluids to the body, the elements can be loaded in the regions of the body. Any extremely dynamic accumulation of elements in a sick body is to be avoided because the patient will not agree with such a stimulus. The most efficient magic healing process consists in successively influencing the patient's spirit, soul, and body accordingly. Based on the mentioned examples and the analogous universal laws, the magician ought to know how to proceed without a particular hint, answering the question whether an expert and duly trained magician would be able to completely heal every kind of disease, even the most incurable ones. It may be said that the magician has in fact the possibility to cure even the most malignant illness, providing that none of the organs in the body is missing. But the magician will read in the book of Fate Akasha how far he is allowed to intervene, because certain ailments depend on karmic conditions. The patient has to atone for this or that omission in his present or former life by suffering the illness. If, however, the magician feels a call to act as a means to an end, healing or alleviating the sickness, or to cure it completely, which the truly wise magician can read in the Akasha too, he will work astounding miracles based on these instructions and considering the universal rules. The highest adepts who ever walked on our globe and brought about the most fabulous healings, resuscitations of the dead, etc., could only do so by considering the universal laws, their powers and fluids, and here it did not matter at all whether the realization of their faith played any part, consciously or unconsciously, or if the living word Kobala was the important factor. It does indeed depend on the magician's degree of development how far the miraculous healings can reach. 2. Magic loading of talismans, amulets, and gems. The belief in talismans, amulets, and jewels goes back to time immemorial and has its origin in fetishism that is still widespread among primitive races. The belief in a talisman and similar things has survived from these earlier stages to the present day, but modified its character according to the modern style of life. What else but talismans are all the mascots, pendants, rings, and brooches that are supposed to bring good luck? Today, it is birthstones that are held in particularly high esteem. So if there were not something true, or perhaps even magic in the nature of talismans, the thought of and belief in them would be bound to have disappeared long ago. Let us then sort out the wheat from the chaff and lift the veil a bit. A talisman, amulet, or birthstone is meant to strengthen the trustworthiness and the credit extended to the person who bears it. By paying closer attention to his talisman, the bearer's subconscious is influenced in the desired direction by way of autosuggestion, and various effects may be carried out according to his aptitudes. No wonder if a materially inclined man, an uninterested scientist, condemns such a belief, expresses criticism, and pokes fun, marking it with the brand of superstition. The wise magician is aware of the true nature of such things, and he will not be content with bearing a talisman for the mere purpose of raising the faith and the confidence, but he will endeavor to investigate the laws underlying the secrets of the talismans. He knows that talismans based on the beliefs of their bearers become inefficient as soon as they pass into the hand of an unbeliever or a skeptic. With his knowledge of the causal nexus, the magician goes deeper and deeper into the matter relating to it. Before dealing with this synthesis, let us treat the various differences. A talisman in the hands of a magician is nothing else but an implement, a clue, something material into which he is binding or enclosing his power, his ultimate cause, his fluid. Its shape and its material value are of no importance at all to him. He neither considers beauty, nor fashion, nor prestige. It represents to him an object with the help of which, by binding his powers to it, he produces certain causes destined to liberate the desired effect irrespective of the bearer believing it or not. A pentacle, on the other hand, is a specific object, a talisman being in accordance with the laws of analogy concerning the desired strength, faculty, and cause. The magician has to consider these rules of analogy when he is producing and loading such a pentacle, which he will always prefer to the talisman, especially if he wants to communicate with beings of other higher worlds, no matter whether good or evil entities are concerned, genii or demons. An amulet again is a divine, or a holy verse from the Bible, a mantra, which is a sentence expressing the worship of a deity, written on parchment or paper. Carrying around various magic herbs such as mandrake and the like which are believed to possess a kind of protective power belongs to this category of amulets too. Furthermore, this category includes fluid condensers in solid or liquid form, or blotting papers moistened with them, lodestones and natural magnets, as well as tiny artificial horseshoe magnets. Last of all, let me mention the precious and semi-precious stones that are particularly suitable fluid condensers and have been used at all times for protection, luck, success, and healing. Astrologers have ascribed a special effect to each stone on the base of color and hardness theory and advised people born under a certain sign or planet to bear the respective stone as a lucky stone. But the true magician knows, of course, that these astrologically selected stones have a very insignificant effect, and that such a stone is absolutely worthless for anyone that does not believe in such things, whereas stones that are in accordance with an astrological effect are suitable to and susceptible of the corresponding magic loading as far as hardness, chemical composition, and color are concerned. The magician can consider these astrological arguments as far as possible, but he is by no means dependent on them. If he wishes to, he can load any stone, even the one that seems to be most unfavorable from the astrological point of view, magically to such a degree that certain results can be accomplished, no matter whether the person does or does not believe in the result. There will always be the outcome the magician orders and nothing else. Having interpreted the different kinds and variants of talismans, amulets, pentacles, and precious stones, let me talk about several loadings of which I am going to quote 10 kinds. 1. Loading with the mere willpower in connection with imagination. 2. Loading with the help of timed accumulation of the vital power and wish impregnation. 3. Loading by binding elementals, elementaries, beings due to accomplish the desired result. 4. Loading with the help of individual and traditional rituals. 5. Loading with the help of magic formulas, mantras, tantras, and the like. 6. Loading by accumulation of elements. 7. Loading by electric and magnetic fluids. 8. Loading with the help of accumulation of the power of the light. 9. Loading by electromagnetic volts. 10. Loading by magosexual operations. Each of the loading possibilities quoted here has numerous variants again, but it would take me too long to describe all of them. The advanced magician will find his own loadings with the help of his intuition. The 10 ones mentioned here are supposed to serve as a rule of conduct only, and therefore a brief description appears indicated. 2.1. Loading with willpower and imagination. This is the simplest and easiest method, the effect of which depends on the willpower, and the imaginative faculty of the magician. Every talisman, amulet, and pentacle, with the exception of paper and parchment amulets, has to be cleared from the fluid clinging to it before the magic loading can be performed. The best way to do so is with the help of the magic of water. Take a glass of fresh cold water and dip the talisman into it. While doing so, concentrate on the water taking away all evil influences. Hold on to this concentration for quite a while. After some minutes of deep concentration, you ought to be perfectly sure that all evil influences have been sucked up by the water and that your talisman is absolutely free from them. Dry the talisman and be sure that it is receptive to your own influence. You have to perform this clearage on every non-liquid talisman irrespective of the method you are about to use in order to load it. Hold the talisman in your hand and by imagination fix your desire on it with all your willpower, with faith and confidence. Time the efficiency of your desire, whether it is to last for a certain period only or forever. And furthermore, if the effect is meant for a certain person only or for anybody that carries the talisman. Use the form of the present tense. Imagine that the desire is working already. You can intensify the virtue of the concentrated desire by frequent repetition of the loading, which will make the emissive power of the talisman more pervasive. Transfer the feeling while concentrating on the wish that the effectiveness of the talisman should remain and become stronger if you do not think about it, and that in case it is meant for somebody else, it should do the same effect. Provided that you loaded the talisman to the best of your knowledge and with the greatest possible force, it is ready, 2 to 2, loading with timed accumulation of vital power and wish impregnation. The talisman is to be freed from the fluid in the same manner as described in 1. If the point in question is a talisman that you want to use yourself, you will have to perform the accumulation of the vital power in your own body. See the instruction of step 3. If you loaded your body expansively with vital power, lead it via your right hand into your talisman and compress the accumulated vital power to such a degree that it fills the entire shape of the talisman, amulet, or stone. While doing so, you have to imagine that the talisman is sucking in the vital power, keeping it inside for so long as you want it to. You must work with the firm conviction that during the time you are carrying or using the talisman, its effectiveness will not decrease or become stronger instead. The vital power taken over by the talisman and pressed together there to snow-white brilliance will seem to be like a shining sun. You see how far your imagination must reach. Transfer the desire concerning the effectiveness of the talisman to your body right away while accumulating the vital power. The duration of the effect can be fixed imaginatively afterwards too. Choose the present tense to express your inner conviction that the talisman has got its full effectiveness immediately after the loading. Do not command several wishes into one talisman, and least of all contradictory ones. The most effective loading is restricted to one desire only. Furthermore, always express wishes within the reach of possibility and avoid fancy loadings that cannot be fulfilled. This command goes for every kind of talisman and loading. How expansive the force of such a loading is can best be checked with the help of a pendulum. If you load a talisman for someone else, the accumulated vital force is not to be led through your own body, but has to be taken directly from the universe, being imaginatively condensed and conveyed to the talisman. All the rest of the instructions remain the same. 2 to 3. Loading by binding elementals in C. I have already described the creation of elementals and elementaries in the previous steps. Naturally, any being like these can be bound to a talisman, etc. The spell has to be performed with a self-selected word, a short, specially composed ritual, or a gesture with the imagination. It will suffice then to execute the gesture or ritual, or to pronounce the word or formula, and the spellbound elemental will release the respective effect. The magician will certainly know the times when he will be able to bind an elemental to a talisman. It is obvious that he will use elementals to influence the mental sphere, but for the achievement of astral or material results, he will resort to elementaries. Entities or beings can be bound to a talisman in this manner too, in order to obtain certain effects, and there is no duly trained magician who could not perform such acts. He is able to establish the contact by the practice of the passive communication with the magic mirror or by inducing a trance in Akasha. No further directions are necessary here, and the magician ought to know for himself what he has got to do. 2 to 4. Loading by individual or traditional rituals. This practice is preferred mainly by Oriental magicians who are endowed with a stupendous amount of patience that is indispensable where this kind of loading is concerned. The Oriental magician makes a certain self-selected sign above the talisman or with it directly in the air, with his hands, fingers, or even one finger quite individually. While doing so, he concentrates on the effect that the talisman is desired to have. He will repeat this experiment several times every day, thus producing so strong a volt in the Akasha by these constant repetitions that the desired effect is as good as granted. If by frequent repetition of the experiment, the magic volt in the Akasha has grown strong enough, it suffices to perform the ritual or the sign with or above the talisman, which may be done without any imagination or mental effort, in order to produce the desired effect. A magician familiar with the Kabbalah will know that he ritually loaded his own battery in the Akasha 462 times, corresponding to the Kabbalistic number of 462, on 462 days for the purpose that his ritual would produce an automatic effect. This loading is practicable without great effort, but it is very wearisome and lengthy, and a European magician will hardly display this surplus of patience in order to achieve a result that he can sooner obtain with the help of one of the methods described here. The loading by a traditional ritual is easier and requires only a few repetitions to bring about the contact, the effect being so amazing as to verge on a miracle. The snag here is that such traditional loading rituals happen to be the secrets of lodges, sects, and sea that I myself cannot give away. It is quite obvious that a magician trained in clairvoyance could easily get hold of these secrets, but there is always the danger of being found out, and the Oriental magicians who guard their rituals under the oath of death would proceed ruthlessly against anyone that should dare to grab them without permission. Therefore, I warn every magician not to do such pilfering. It is usually by gestures that the secret signs of various deities Ishtadavatas are performed upon the talisman, a similar way as I described it in the description of the individual rites. No doubt, a loading like this has an extraordinary effect because this particular ritual is celebrated by hundreds of magicians, being handed down traditionally for one generation to the next. A member who has been declared to be mature is usually offered such a ritual as a sort of distinction. The grant of such a ritual, which at the same time establishes the contact with the corresponding battery, is called Anchor or Abhisheka in the Orient. 2 to 5. Loading by magic formulas, mantras, tantra, etc. This kind represents one of the greatest and most powerful loadings, but it requires high knowledge and a lot of preparation that I will describe in my following two works concerning magic evocation and the practical Kabbalah. Therefore, I shall restrict myself to a short remark only. The first kind of loading is realized by repeating a magic formula, and the desired effect is accomplished with the help of an entity selected for this purpose. The loading by mantras is done by imagining or speaking a magic sentence in worship of a deity many times into a suitable talisman, japa yoga. The quality of the deity in question becomes materialized in this manner. It is absolutely certain that fabulous results can be compassed on all planes in this manner. A loading by Tantra is nothing else but the correct use of word magic, where certain cosmic powers are employed with the help of suitable letters, words, etc., regarding the cosmic rhythm, sound, color, and quality. 2 through 6. Loading by accumulation of elements. This possibility of loading is offered to every magician who went through his practical training up to now. Supposing the magician wants a certain result to be achieved through an element principle, he will load the talisman or pentacle with the corresponding element. The loading itself happens in the same way as described in Method 2, by accumulation of the vital power, only accepting that the desired element is used instead of the vital power. For a personal use, the accumulation takes place in the own body, but for other persons, it is done directly from the universe. For example, if one element is difficult to master, the opposite one is to be used for screening with the help of a loaded talisman. Many other results can be accomplished through the elements, and a magician who is absolutely perfect in mastering the elements will intuitively compose the desired variants himself. 2 through 7. Loading with electric or magnetic fluid. One of the most powerful loadings consists in using the electric or magnetic fluid. When the talisman is supposed to protect something, to screen it, to irradiate it, or to develop any kind of activity, one will mainly use the electric fluid. But if it is to produce an attractive power, to bring about sympathy, luck, or success, the magnetic fluid will be employed. The manner of loading is exactly the same as previously described, but if the point is a talisman for personal purposes, the accumulation is performed in the corresponding half of the body only, not in the whole body. The magnetic fluid is accumulated dynamically in the left half of the body and projected through the left hand into the talisman. In the matter of the electric fluid, it will be the right side, and the projection takes place through the right hand. 2 through 8. Loading with accumulated light power. To achieve subtler spiritual effects, such as the enhancement of different occult powers, intuition, inspiration, etc., a talisman is loaded with condensed light power. The loading is executed in the same way as the accumulation of vital force with concomitant desire impregnation, timing, and so forth. The light pressed together in the talisman is like a sun that shines brighter than ordinary daylight. A talisman destined for personal use is accumulated with light power through the own body, whereas the power is to be drawn from the universe when intended for other persons. Otherwise, the usual rules and instructions have to be observed. 2 through 9. Loading with an electromagnetic volt. To mitigate karmic influences, to be protected against influences of other spheres, and to turn fate according to one's desire. A talisman is loaded for one's own or for other people's purposes with a magic volt. This kind of loading is called volting and represents the strictest imitation of the Akasha principle, and only a magician aiming at the highest target, the union with God, should use this kind of loading not to burden himself with an interference in Akasha. As I mentioned repeatedly already, everything has been created by the two fluids by means of the four elements. According to the universal law, the electric fluid will always be in the center. On the periphery of the electric fluid, where expansion ceases, the magnetic fluid begins to work, and this is where it is most powerless. The distance from the focus or center to the periphery of the electric fluid is exactly the same as the one from the beginning of the magnetic fluid to the periphery, where the magnetic attractive power is strongest. This law is valid in small things as well as in big ones, in the microcosm as well as the macrocosm. When loading with a volt, attention has to be paid to this law. If you wish to load a talisman, etc., for your own purposes with a volt, you have to proceed as follows. In the right half of your body, accumulate the electric fluid dynamically with all your strength via your hand, and finally through the forefinger. Project the accumulated electric fluid to a powerful electric spark and encase it with your imagination exactly in the center of the talisman. You have got to see this spark as if it were red hot. Now do the same with the magnetic fluid, directing it through your forefinger of the left hand so that you wrap the electric spark with your magnetic fluid to such a degree that it becomes invisible in your imagination. Imagine the compressed magnetic fluid as being a blue color. If you manage this, only a small blue ball ought to be left comprising the entire shape of the talisman. Herewith the volt has been produced and is ready to impregnate with your desire and duration of the effect. Supposing you wish to increase the loading later, which probably will not be necessary, all you have to do is condense the magnetic fluid, and the electric fluid inside of it will be increased automatically. A volt like this has such a powerful magic effect that it could even change the karma at will. A magician who can accomplish this is no longer subject to ordinary karma, but only to divine providence. Loading a talisman for another person with a volt is done in the same manner, but the fluids are not drawn through the body, but directly from the universe. Volting for other persons should be practiced only in the worst case of positive need, because the magician has to be absolutely sure that the person in question is really inspired by high ideals, longing for ideals only, but being haunted by karma. The magician's clairvoyant eyes will recognize these facts, and his intuition will always teach him what to do and what to avoid. At this point, the magician himself will be responsible for all and everything. The most skeptical Thomas, however, would be greatly amazed at the enormous effect of such a magical volt bound to a small magnet so that the ball wraps the whole magnet. 2 to 10. Loading by magosexual operations. There is still another kind of loading, a subject I shall deal with only briefly here. For ethic and moral reasons, I desist from describing the practice in detail. The meditating magician will find out all about this practice, but he too will desist from working with it, since in the meantime he got to know so many different possibilities of loading. Only a magician on a very high ethical level could dare make use of this practice, because all things are pure to the pure. In the hands of an immoral man, these practices would do more harm than good. At least, a lot of mischief would be done by them, and powers as high as those of love must not be misused. Therefore, I am restricted to comment briefly on the principle on which this loading is based. First of all, certain precautions are essential, without which the operation could not be accomplished successfully. Any magosexual operation, whatever purpose it may serve, is a sacred act, a prayer by which the generative act of love is imitated. Everything created in the universe has been produced by the act of love. This universal law is the fundament of sexual magic. Obviously, one ought to work with a like-minded congenial partner who has gone through the same magical training. The male magician represents the active begetting principle, whereas the female partner, familiar with the mastery of the electric and magnetic fluids, has got to change her polarity so that her head becomes magnetic and her genitals electric. With respect to the male partner, the conditions are reversed. The polarity of his head must be electric and that of the genitals magnetic. The intercourse between the two partners produces an extremely strong bipolar effort that gives rise to an enormous effect. Performing this act of love, its outcome does not mean new life, but the desired cause together with its effect has been begotten. Here the lower as well as the upper double pole are coming into operation. The tetrapolar magnet, the Yod He Vav He, is working the highest mystery of love here, the creation. How easy it would be to degrade this act, the highest thing existent on earth, to mere carnal appetites that would lead to damnation. The expulsion of Adam and Eve from paradise finds it as highest symbolism here. The magician who dares to approach the highest of all practices has to master the upper as well as the lower streams in order to transfer the loading eventually into his talisman. To dishonor this sacred act by carnal desires would mean to repeat the fate of Adam and Eve, who were no longer allowed to enjoy the fruits of paradise. The intuitive magician will understand without difficulty how great this symbolism is, and will agree with me if I stick to my duty of secrecy about the greatest of all mysteries. 3. Realization of a desire with electromagnetic volts in Akasha. I have described the production of a volt by means of the electromagnetic fluid in the chapter referring to loading a talisman. The process is the same here, except that the electromagnetic ball has to be bigger for a volt in the akasha. The practice is as follows. Accumulate the electric fluid in the right half of your body with all the strength you can afford and project it through the palm of the right hand to the outside, forming the electric fluid into a ball suspended in the air with your imagination. The projection is not going through the finger, but through the palm. The fiery ball has to be red hot, becoming increased dynamically by frequent accumulation and projection of the electric fluid. This kind of accumulation and dynamic loading has to be performed until the ball reaches a diameter of 1 yard. Perform the same process with the magnetic fluid, projecting it through the palm of the left hand, wrapping the electric ball layer by layer until the accumulated magnetic fluid reaches a diameter of 2 yards. The electromagnetic volt is now complete. When doing such a volt destined for another person, the magician has to take the electric and magnetic fluids directly from the universe. If such an electromagnetic volt has been prepared with a firm faith and conviction, the magician will impregnate the volt, the strongest magic accumulator existing, with the respective concentration of the desire. By means of his imagination, he will create the desired cause that his volt is to produce. At last, having determined the duration of his magic volt, the magician will fling it into the causal world of Akasha with his imagination. Then he interrupts the connection with his volt, stopping thinking of it at that very moment, forgetting it and paying attention to other matters. The volting quoted here is one of the most powerful operations that the magician is able to accomplish in his present state of development, for now he has succeeded in mastering himself as well as other people. The cause he transferred with his volt into Akasha will do its effect, and it is of no importance at all whether it concerns the mental, astral, or material plane. The magician will certainly appreciate this great and responsible opportunity and accomplish only noble deeds for his own benefit and that of his fellow creatures for whom he dares to undertake this operation. The magician who walked on the path of hardships up to this very point has balanced his karma with his troublesome exercises, which were more than asceticism so far that it will do him no more harm. The magician is no longer subject to the ordinary influences of destiny. He became master of his fate, and nothing but divine providence in its highest aspect can influence his will. Summary of exercises of Step 9. 1. Magic mental training. 1. Practice of clairvoyance with the help of magic mirrors. A. Seeing through time and space. B. Distant effect through the magic mirror. C. Different tasks of projection through the magic mirror. 2. Magic psychic training. 1. Deliberate separation of the astral body from the material body. 2. Impregnation of the astral body with the 4 divine fundamental qualities. 3. Magic physical training. 1. Treatment of the sick with the electromagnetic fluid. 2. Magical loading of the astral body with the 4 divine fundamental qualities. 3. Wish realization through electromagnetic volts. End of Step 9. Please stay tuned for Part 10. Thank you for your continued support. Peace, blessings, and much love to you all. On Earth, there was once a people who held the knowledge of the universe across space and time. They were the Israelites. Over time, their wisdom was scattered among all nations, with each taking a piece. In the end, this left them destitute. Now, listen to this profound wisdom passed down through great works, presented in your voice, from your own perspective, from the perspective of the Israelites themselves. For early access to chapters and full audiobooks, consider becoming a member. For just $10 per month, you can unlock exclusive access to this priceless wisdom, once stolen from our ancestors. Hear their voices through your own as you join us on this journey of discovery and reclamation.